Hey guys, welcome to Pancreas Pals. We exist. It's Emily.
And Miriam.
Yay! We back at it.
Woo!
Life's been crazy, and Miriam and I are trying so hard to continue this, and we are going to because where there is a type 1 diabetic woman, there's a way. So,
Where there is a type 1 diabetic woman, there's people to complain about it.
so true. Retweet.
That's us.
So we're sneaking this in while Max takes a nap, but
Yes.
so if you hear any crying, it's likely not me, could be, but probably Max. So this episode is actually, we're going to talk about a little updated tech situation. I've been on the Dexcom G7 for about a month now, maybe 6 weeks, and I have lots of thoughts. I was able to also wear a Freestyle Libre a couple of months back, Libre 3. So I'm excited to compare and contrast the two. I do want to
Yeah.
say, I promised an episode on my COVID experience, which was now 4 months ago, and that'll be another time, but I still have thoughts on that. So if you're like, Emily, where the heck is that episode? Know that it's coming. It was just a lot. So it'll be a second. Um, all of this is to say that, yeah, the Dexcom G7. So let's get into some jargon before
Yeah.
Miriam and I jump in.
And
So,
I just want to say, I also specifically have not asked Emily anything about this because I figured I'll just ask her now during this episode. So I know nothing about what she's talking about.
LOL. Yeah, we're all hearing it for the first time. Honestly, even me, because I did not formulate any thoughts before I started speaking, which is kind of my MO, which I should work on, but that's neither here nor there. And sorry if I'm talking really fast. Not sorry, because I am hyped up on caffeine because I was watching my niece and she decided to start crying at 5 a.m. this morning and I went to bed at midnight. So that's on me. Sorry, Amelia. Okay. So, some jargon for those of you who are pancreatically capable and or don't have access to something called a CGM, which is a continuous glucose monitor. Continuous glucose monitors have been around for a minute. There's really three main ones: the Freestyle Libre, which is by Abbott, the Dexcom, which is by Dexcom, and Medtronic. No, what is
I don't. It
MiniMed
is Med.
3? Is it Medtronic? No.
It is Medtronic. I just don't know what they call their CGM, but it's
Yeah,
Mini Med
it's
Medtronic.
something.
Yeah,
I could probably Google that because
that's all right.
but anywho, we are going to be talking about, yeah, it is Medtronic, the Guardian Connect system.
Guardian.
Anyways,
That's right.
um, we're going to be talking about the Dexcom G7. So CGMs, they measure the level of interstitial fluid between the levels of your skin, which is basically your blood sugar without taking any blood. So it is a little less accurate, but it works fairly well on the whole. It's a science that I can't explain to you, but I'm sure if you head to another podcast, they can. But yeah, so they are groundbreaking in terms of how to manage anyone, type 2 diabetics, even I think some pre-diabetics can benefit from using a continuous glucose monitor, anyone that has blood sugar fluctuations. I'm not going to get on my high horse and talk about how people without blood sugar fluctuation should not be using CGMs because it's creating a barrier to care. But I
That's a
basically
whole other episode.
that's a whole other episode that I just, we're not getting into today. I think you can glean what I think about that, though, from my inflection. Anyways, I started the Dexcom G7. So is it the seventh iteration, Miriam? Do you
I
know?
I assume so based on the number. They only started numbering them, I think, like around 4, right?
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
Or maybe there was
I
a 3.
I
Regardless,
started
this
on,
is the 7th.
yeah. So Miriam, do you remember your first ever Dexcom?
I want to say it was like the 3 or 4. I remember many, many moons ago. I probably was still in high school or maybe I was early college, but I remember at my doctor's office, they had a program where you could wear a CGM for 1 week. They would like rent it out to you, or maybe it wasn't even 1 week, maybe it was a couple days. And then you had to go back to the doctor's office and then they would like get all the data from it. It was like an old, like that's just how they did it before they were more commercially available to like patients to have at home. You would like borrow the CGM from the doctor's office and then they would get the data after the fact. So that
Yeah.
was the first time, and I want to say that was in high school. I started wearing it more regularly, like every single day wearing them, um, after college for me. I think it was like 3 years out of college for me. So I think it was probably like 2015 or so I started wearing one every day. And that's because they weren't so accurate before that. So I kind of waited until they were super accurate, or more accurate, more dependable, when I started wearing it all the time, because I found the alarms to be super annoying. It would say, "Oh, your blood sugar's low, your blood sugar's high," when it like wasn't if I checked my blood sugar with the meter. So now they are significantly more accurate, as technology has improved.
That's not to
So
say we don't still have issues with them, which we'll get
yeah,
into. It's
nothing is perfect, but they're
yeah.
significantly more accurate and a little bit more dependable to make decisions based off the readings. And so I use the Dexcom G6 because that's the one that my insulin pump, the Tandem T Slim, that's the one it works with for the hybrid loop system. But the G7 just came out, and I'm really excited to hear Emily's experience with it, because I'm hoping, eventually that's the plan, is T Slim will start using the G7 as well for their looping system. So,
So
Emily,
fun
take it
fact,
away.
a little bit of background. I mean, if you're anyone who's on Instagram or TikTok has probably seen some type of influencer that has diabetes talking about the Dexcom G7.
Hmm.
There have been a lot of sponsored ads. There's been like a lot of, you know, just a big social media push about the
Yes.
launch. This is not sponsored by Dexcom. This is literally my hot takes. I am sharing the good, the bad, the confusing. And yeah, so I just really wanted to say that this is in no way affiliated with
Like,
Dexcom
you
or
got this, like,
Freestyle.
through your insurance.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I do want to disclose that they sent, because I work for a health magazine and because I have
Hmm.
a health podcast, they did send me not an actual product. They offered to send me like a free one to test out of the G7, but I was like, no, because I have some hot takes on that.
But they gave you like a
And
prototype so you could like see what.
yeah, they gave me a prototype. So it was plastic. It was nothing that could connect
Mhm.
to anything. It did not insert into the skin, nothing like
Mhm.
that. So I was able to see the actual mechanism earlier on, but I wanted to wait to do an episode until I had worn it and tested it out myself and gotten it when everyone else was available to get it.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with testing it out. That's just my hot take about,
Yeah.
press mailings and stuff like that, because this is something that is so critical to care for your blood sugar and
Mhm.
for any type of diabetes management. I do think it's a little sensitive of a subject that I
Yeah.
just,
It just made
it's
you feel
already,
icky. I get
yeah,
that.
it's already a little, it didn't make me feel, I thought it was really cool to see the mechanisms and
Yeah.
stuff. Like, I'm so glad. And like, I really love the press people for them. They're actually really nice people and all that stuff. But anyways, so that's why this episode is much later than all of your, other not that we're diabetes influencers, but I feel like this has been on the interwebs for a minute. Okay, so some things about the G7. Let's start off with what's different between the G7 and the G6.
Okay.
There are a handful of things. We'll post a picture of what the G7 looks like along with this episode, but it is significantly smaller. It's
Different
about the
shape too.
size. Yeah, it's circular. It's about the size of like a cup. I don't have the actual literature in front of me, but
Like a
it's like
quarter.
probably a quarter. Yeah, it's like a
Oh, Emily's
quarter.
showing it to me now.
Um,
Nice.
and what I thought was really interesting is it comes with an overpatch, and you are like when reading the directions and going through the application process, it says to put the overpatch on top,
Oh, okay. So it's
which
now
is
like, it's not just
interesting.
like if you need it, it's suggested
Yeah,
like you should wear this. Okay.
yeah, and I
Is that the
very
one you
much,
have on right now?
yeah,
Okay.
it's basically just like a white overpatch.
Okay.
It's interesting. It's not it's the adhesive on it is really interesting to me because it
Okay.
sticks like no other, but then it also certain parts of it just completely come off.
Oh,
So
like the corners start peeling more
yeah,
easily.
but
Interesting.
I've never had this level of adhesive on like an actual um,
Interesting. Okay.
piece of like medical equipment because I
Yeah.
still have residue when I remove it. I have very sensitive, very pale Eastern European skin, so I do get a little bit of irritation, but it's nothing like, I get with the Omnipod, to be quite
Okay.
honest.
But
So
it's notably different adhesive than the
notably
G6 one
different
for you.
adhesive. Well, the
Interesting.
overpatches, the
Okay. Okay.
overpatch.
Okay.
The actual, so okay, so it's about the size of like two or three nickels,
Yeah.
quarters,
And for
however you want
those
to.
who have seen the Freestyle Libre, to me, at first glance, it looks like the same shape and size as the Libre. They're very
Yes,
similar.
it's slightly thicker and
Okay.
slightly longer. Um,
Interesting. But it's still
but
like circle
because it
shape.
is shaped in that Dexcom like arrowy type of way,
Oh,
it's like
gotcha.
so it's a little
So it's not a
bit
perfect circle. It's a little bit more
exactly.
irregular.
Yes, and it's gray because each individual each sensor comes with the transmitter already in it. So that's number one, a huge difference.
Yeah.
It
So
is
instead of using
exponentially
one,
cheaper. Um,
yeah. So
yeah,
instead of
so
using one transmitter for 3 months, you're actually getting a new
just
transmitter with each sensor patch.
yeah, and the packaging is so much less wasteful in my opinion. It because it all comes packaged together. It's very similar
Nice.
to a Freestyle Libre applicator in that it's basically like a circle. It's like a cylinder, and then there you stick it on your skin. There's an opening
Hmm.
with a little needle. You can actually see the insertable needle this time though, so I could see how that might dissuade some people, but it's really small compared to the initial applicator for the G6 because
Hmm.
the mechanism is different. So this time instead of going in at to your interstitial levels at a certain
Yeah.
like 40-degree angle, it's now I believe going in at a 90-degree
Oh,
angle.
interesting. Okay.
So it's not
So
as
it's
deep.
Yeah, so it's more like for those using tubed pumps, it's probably more like the quick
Yes.
set or the T90, like those sort of infusion sets.
Exactly.
That's
I'm
how it
assuming
works.
I am a tubeless pump user,
Do
but
you
alas.
remember the old, this is reminding me, the old Dexcom inserters? I think it
You
was for
mean
the
I have
G4, G5.
actual trauma,
Those were
like
so
so
painful
painful. Honestly,
and
the
so
most
clunky,
so
like
clunky, so
so
painful.
weird. Anyways,
Um,
just a reminder how much
how
has
far we've
changed in a
come.
relatively short period of time.
Yeah. I will say this application is it's a little you have to press the button in a certain way to get
Okay.
to trigger the release of the sensor, but I will say it doesn't hurt. Another difference is that it is FDA approved to wear on the back of your arms,
Hmm.
whereas the G7, I believe, is FDA approved. So that's not necessarily meaning that you can't or that it might not
Yeah.
work for you. It's just what has been tested and what has been approved by the Federal Drug Administration
Hmm.
in the US. Um, to the G7,
The
the
G6, yeah,
G6
was
was
only on
approved
the
for your
abdomen,
stomach.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you were a small child on like your upper butt or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so I love not having anything on my stomach now. It also
Yeah.
freed up a lot of space for me to put my insulin pump on my stomach, just because I don't like wearing like doubling up on my
Yeah.
stomach. Um, it makes for like awkward. It makes for my pants looking weird, whatever. But I love this. This third thing is like the biggest thing to me, and it is the 30-minute warm up
Yep.
session.
I'm excited about
Um,
that.
and I found out by accident, even though I later saw someone talking about this, I found out that if you put on a new sensor while your old sensor is still active, it does the warm up time for you during the new sensor. You don't even have to calibrate it yet. So I
Oh.
put one on because I was like, oh, I don't want to, like I'm about to
You're
head
getting
out.
ready
I
to
don't want
shoot.
to,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and then I literally was like, okay, end sensor session. And then it popped up, new sensor session started 30 minutes ago. And I was like, wait, what? And it backfilled and it was live. So there was
It knew.
no time in between.
Oh,
Um,
that's amazing. That's a
it
good
was
little
so
hack.
cool.
Yeah.
It was so cool. And I
And
thought
so
like,
and
okay,
so for comparison, it used to be a 2, or the G6 still has a 2-hour warm up, meaning when you insert your Dexcom, it takes 2 hours before you get the first reading. So this
right.
G7, it's only 30 minutes, or if you do it Emily's sneaky way, instantly.
Now the only downside for the sneaky way is that it starts the sensor from that time.
Yeah,
So
so
if
you can't
you're
put it
like,
on too early.
yeah, yeah, there's like not a huge point in
Yeah.
overlapping them. Do you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily keep, and you can't really keep both on because the new sensor won't start on your app
Mhm.
until you remove the other one.
The other one,
But it was a wild moment. I was like, is this broken? Did I do something wrong? What is going on?
yeah.
And then I remembered, oh wait, this is actually a thing. which is really hard to explain. But next time I do a change, maybe I'll try and like share my
Oh yeah,
screen or something and
yeah.
do like an Instagram situation for it. So those are the major pros in addition to the app being really interesting and having your clarity
Mm-hmm.
as a part of the report. I'll share a screenshot. It's kind of hard to
Yeah, Emily's
focus.
showing me now, but yeah, the Clarity app on Dexcom is now built into the Dexcom app instead of being two separate apps.
Yes, and for those who don't know what Clarity is or don't have a Dexcom or just don't know what a CGM is to begin with, the Clarity app is basically the aggregator of your Dexcom data, and it will show you trend reports, averages of your blood glucose, or sorry,
Mm-hmm.
your blood sugars, because it's not literally the glucose. For that wasn't proper English, but I think you get what I'm saying. Anywhere from 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, and 90 days.
Yeah,
So you
just
can
like
toggle
data
between those.
analytics. Yeah.
Yeah, data analytics. It shows you your time in range and your percent changing over certain periods of time. And you can like really click into stuff. Once you get past 7 days, it'll show you your GMI, which is your like basically your estimated A1C based off of the Dexcom data. So this is where things
Mm-hmm.
can get a little tricky because this brings me to my next point, accuracy. I will
Okay.
say for me so far, the G7 and the G6 accuracy has been super comparable.
Okay.
Take that for what it is because the G6 to me had terrible accuracy.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Okay.
well, for the first 24 to 48 hours, and then it
Yeah.
was like
Oh, I didn't
spot
know that.
on.
Yeah.
This, I will say the accuracy is similar for the first 24 hours, but usually
Okay.
it syncs up more quickly. Like I find it better than the G6 in terms of like how long it takes for it to kind of swing back into shape.
Mm-hmm.
But once it gets off, it's like when your blood sugar is moving really quickly in either direction, the G7, in my experience, freaks out. I get a sensor, like the question marks or a sensor error,
Oh,
not
interesting. So it's more
necessarily.
sensitive in that sense where it's
Yes.
noticing your
I
fluctuations.
had a huge drop yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe the sensor was just extremely off. But I do much more finger pricks with the G7 than I do with the G6
Okay.
because I don't fully trust it yet.
Okay.
I've only been using it for like 6 weeks, but also because when I do the finger pricks, if I'm low or if I'm high, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like when I'm within range and I feel fine, I'm not going to be doing a finger prick. But if
Mm-hmm.
I can tell when I'm dropping, or I can tell when I'm low, or I can tell if I'm very, very high, then I'll do a finger prick to check it against. I will say there are times where it is 40 points off, and then that to me is worth a calibration. There
Mm-hmm.
are so you can calibrate with this one. They make it very easy to calibrate. You can also with the app, you can also just add in a blood sugar number if you don't have to use it as a calibration. You can
Oh,
just
nice.
add it. So it's
Oh, for
interesting
data
for like
points. Mm-hmm.
yeah, for data points. And since this is integrated with my loop because I use uh, not well, I guess
Tide
it
pull loop.
technically well, no, because they, like, don't really they're ending up not going with the Tide Pool for it was FDA approved with Tide Pool, but the G7 wasn't.
Okay.
So, basically, I'm using
You're still
Katie
doing like DIY looping basically.
DIY
Okay.
looping, created by Katie DeSimone, rest in peace. She was amazing. Um, and a whole bunch of the other amazing DIY loopers. We Are Not Waiting crowd. Check them out on Facebook. There's a whole group. They're incredible. So I've been using this for about 4 years now. So I just rebuild the using code sourced online through this group when the technology is updated. So I
Okay.
changed to
That
the
was my
Omnipod.
next question. I didn't know if you were using Omnipod's looping system or if you were still doing DIY.
So I had to upgrade to the Omnipod Dash because the Aris pods are going out. Like they're not going to
Gotcha.
be
Okay.
doing them anymore. And so I updated my loop code because they have loop 3, which
Hmm.
incorporates the Omnipod Dash and the Dexcom G7. That's not FDA approved yet. No one quote me
Okay.
on this, but that's what I'm using. It's incredible. Loop 3 is incredible, but I could do a whole episode or a whole
Yeah.
series on loop to be quite honest.
Yeah.
So
That was I was going to ask you, and this will be another episode, but if you would ever, now that Omnipod has their own hybrid loop system, would you ever go to their system versus DIY? But we can save that discussion for another time, I guess.
Yeah, I have thoughts. Short answer is with the current
When does Emily not
regulations,
have thoughts is the real
literally
question.
true. That's when you know that
That's when you know
I've had
something's
a
up.
time. Yeah. In short, no, because of the uh,
Current system.
current system, they don't let you go below 110, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but yeah. Anyways, so I will say the first, like 24 hours when the G7 is not as accurate really
Hmm.
does kind of skew your clarity data. So,
Okay.
um, and it can be dangerous if you're using a closed loop system. Now, any that can be said for any of
Oh,
the any technology, right?
of
So
course.
you're kind of taking that in a closed loop system. For those who don't know, is when your insulin pump communicates with your continuous glucose monitor, making adjustments to your background insulin and occasionally to your bolusing, which is your short acting. Well, it's all short acting, but insulin to kind of keep you within a set target
Hmm.
range. Um, and yeah, so those are like the main
And
differences,
you
I'd
can
say.
you wear it? Is it 14-day wear now, or is it still
It's
10
10
days?
day.
Oh,
It's
it is
still
still
10
10. Okay,
day.
couldn't
I don't
remember.
really know. Oh, let's talk about pricing. Now, I I didn't put this through my pharmacy. Uh, so I have private health insurance through my job, and I did this through my durable medical equipment coverage because
Okay.
that's what I used to do for my G6,
Yeah.
and it covered it more.
Hmm.
I was charged $3,100 for a 10 or for a 3-month supply of the G7
Through your durable medical equipment,
through
through
my
your
durable
insurance.
medical.
Okay.
Yeah, without insurance. So it was 3,100
Oh, gotcha.
without
Okay.
insurance through my durable medical equipment, and that was because I also ordered a handheld receiver in case anything should happen to my phone
Gotcha.
or whatever. So like that plus a 3-month supply of the
So
Dexcom G7s
sensors.
was
Yeah.
like $3,100. Now I then or it ended up being like 2,100, and then the receiver was like 1,000, whatever it was,
Okay.
1,000. I then was like, what the heck? Why is this so expensive? And
Yeah.
put it through my pharmacy, and
And
it
it was
was
much cheaper.
$70.
Yeah.
$70 for a 3-month supply.
That happens
So,
sometimes. And there's like no way to really know ahead of time. So I just like, that's word to the wise. Always check, because those are two different sorts of
right.
plans: your durable medical equipment and then your pharmacy benefits. They kind of cover differently. Um, so that's a good reminder for
Hot
people
tip.
to check that out. Hot
Yeah.
tip.
And I know someone who is on like state healthcare, and
Hmm.
her G6s are hella cheap. So like
Yeah.
it obviously depends, and anyone who's
So
paying out of
so dependent
pocket.
on insurance
Yeah,
plans. Yeah.
I really don't know how the out of pocket cost for these compare, but I will say since each one is packaged with a transmitter for the G7,
Uh-huh.
it's less hidden costs in my opinion because you're not getting a
That's
separate thing every 3 months. You're
so
getting
true.
one thing. Now we're
It's
getting
less to
to
keep track of too, which is also
yeah,
nice.
the packaging, it comes in a small box. It comes
Hmm.
packaged with the over adhesive, so you don't have to buy that separately. It's all
Hmm.
packaged together. And it's really just an interesting the warm up goes by so fast. It's wild. The whole thing, the whole experience, I feel
Yeah.
like I'm living in the future. Now,
Question. This is highly
yes.
specific. So with the G6 and previous Dexcom CGMs as well, I'd get things called compression lows, meaning if there's a lot of pressure, like if I, for example, if I have my Dexcom on my stomach and I'm sleeping and lying on my stomach and there's that pressure pushing on the Dexcom, sometimes it would inaccurately read your blood sugar as low. And you know
Right.
when it's a compression low because it'll be like 150, like your blood sugar straight line, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere it'll be like 42 down arrow. So
Yeah.
you know that doesn't make any sense, and what it that's unrealistic. So that's usually from being a compression low. Do you find that still happens with the G7?
Yes. But usually I'll get an error because it's moving so
Oh, it'll
quickly.
that. So instead
Yeah.
of that, okay, that's actually a
Well,
nice improvement in that sense.
it'll, that's not all the time. Like the other
Yeah.
day, I think I was laying on my arm,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden I went from like 110 to like 42 arrows down. And then the next reading was an error.
Okay, because
So
I was trying to
yeah,
make sense of that weird
yeah.
timing.
And then it came back within like I moved and it came back within like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
There, it is really Oh, I forgot. This is the biggest con, in my opinion.
Ooh.
Like, really not good is that you cannot put your phone on low power mode while you're on the G7. I thought that that was just like a recommendation, so I did it,
It
and
won't work?
it literally like disconnected. Well, didn't disconnect, but the Bluetooth, it stopped working. I got an error until I turned it back on. So
Oh,
I have to
that is
charge my phone like 4 times a
so
day now because my loop is on
annoying.
my phone and so is my Dexcom. So I'm just burning through battery like nobody's
Oof.
business. Um,
Oh, that's an
I was talking
interesting
to Matt, who is my coder boyfriend, and sometimes certain apps just aren't uh, like compatible with low power
with
mode.
okay.
So this is something that, in his opinion, could change in the future. No one
Yeah, I was
has
gonna say
told
maybe they'll
me.
do an app update or something.
Yeah, no one has
Interesting.
officially said that. No one has mentioned it. Dexcom warns you a million times not to put your phone on low power mode and
Okay,
not,
so they're
to make
aware of the
sure,
issue.
yeah, and to make sure your phone charge never gets below 20%,
Mhm.
which is hard when you're not allowed to use low power
20%?
mode. Yeah.
Oh, man.
So it's stressful. Like that is a
Oof,
big
yeah.
con to me,
That's a
and I
big
have
thing
to,
when you're used to using your
yeah,
phone for everything.
exactly. So that's something to keep in mind.
Mm.
Um, Now, how this compares to the Freestyle Libre, really quick, because we are running out of time. I loved the Freestyle Libre. The biggest difference to me is that it was a 1 hour warm up time, which is, twice that of the 30 minutes, but half
Mhm.
that of the G6's 2 hours.
Fast math.
So yeah, so do with that what you will. It's factory calibrated, so you can't put in a calibration manually, but I found it
Okay.
to be extremely accurate. I found the
Okay.
Libre 3 for me in the 3 weeks that I wore it
Mhm.
to be extremely accurate.
Okay.
The app was like basic AF, like it wasn't anything to write home about, and it didn't look pretty. But also, this isn't a but. Separate thought.
Go for
It takes readings every 1 minute instead of every
it. Ooh,
5 minutes, which honestly I found a little stressful.
that's like a that is a
Because,
lot.
and I feel like that would be hard to incorporate into a CG or into a closed loop system because that's every
That's
minute.
like too much. But
Yeah.
also, out of curiosity, it because I've never had the Libre, so this is all brand new. But don't you? It doesn't like notify you about readings. You have to
No,
swipe, or the
the
new version
Libre
does.
3 does notify you. There's
Okay,
all these different ways that you
so you can
can set your
constantly see the
levels.
data.
Yeah, you can't
Okay.
change the sound of the alerts,
Oof.
which sucks. But again, it was like super accurate, super
Okay,
easy
that's
to
interesting.
use. Even slimmer profile, like we were saying, than the G7, and it's so cheap.
Hmm.
I don't remember what it is out of pocket, but that one actually was a press mailer, so I'm full of shit because I used that one for free. But it is wild to me how great that was. I think that we will see integration in the future of that
Yeah.
with a closed loop system, but no one has told me that, so that's speculation. But
Hmm.
I really did like the Libre. It is white and super thin, like literally the size of like
Yeah.
one or two stacked quarters or nickels. I know that's a big difference. I think we're going with quarters. That's more of a quarter. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Libre 3. The only reason why I'm not using it is because
No
it's not,
integration.
there's no integration.
Yeah.
Also,
In
I mean, there
on.
are little things that I didn't like about it. Like, it similar to the G7, if your blood sugar is moving really fast in either direction, it had a sensor error and there was
Okay.
no way to manually calibrate.
Yeah.
So that sucks, but it was
That's
hella
awful.
cheap and it was a really sleek, profile.
Hmm.
And I found that I was having less Bluetooth issues with it, to be quite honest.
Yeah. Interesting. So on
Yeah.
that
So
note, speaking of like approval and integration and everything, just a reminder to everyone that the G7 is not yet approved to work with the T Slim or Omnipod hybrid systems yet. But both are in the works. And the last I've heard from T Slim or Tandem is that by the within the 2023 calendar year, it will be. And so I imagine the same is with Omnipod as well. Emily is getting it to work because again, she's doing her DIY looping, so that you can always do if you're a DIY looper, and I know we have episodes and lots of data about that as well. But
We should do an updated episode
yeah,
because things have really changed.
things have
The
changed.
community is incredible, and there are very detailed instructions. If you are interested in learning how to do that, I'm happy to send you links.
Hmm.
Again, we are not healthcare professional. Well, Miriam is, but only specifically in the mental health field.
Only for feelings.
Not more than feelings, but yes. Um, so I'm happy to share links, but I cannot give you advice on any specifics.
Yeah, of
That
course.
being said, Miriam, I feel like I just spoke at you this whole time, so I
No, I
appreciate
learned a
you.
lot.
Just always appreciate you. Let's get
Likewise.
into your favorite part, the spiel of please follow us on Instagram at pancreas_pals, on Facebook at pancreaspalspp. Slide into our DMs on either, both. We love hearing from you. Also, check out our email. Try emailing, not check it out. Oh, there's nothing for you to see there. But email us any ideas you have for episodes. We are on a whole other season and are running out of ideas. So hit me up if you have any episodes that you've been wanting us to try or maybe revisit, since we've been doing this for a hot minute now.
Or anyone you want us to try to talk to.
Yes, yes.
Within reason. We've already asked Nick Jonas. He's like not interested, but
Oh my God, he's in the
within
office this week. He's in my
Nick
office this week.
Jonas.
Yeah, there's a whole, I might need to cut that for legal reasons, but we'll sidebar. Um, but anyways, email us at pancreaspals123@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. We hope everyone has a great week. And thank you for listening, for making it through my long ramblings.
Bye, guys.
Bye.